G'day, legends. Welcome to the Pot Noodle on Celtic Down Under. I'm your host, Jared, and joining me is Shane. How are you, Shane?
Been better, definitely after the performance overnight, that's for sure. But I had a good weekend outside of that, which was nice. Which unfortunately that game took the shine off a little bit, I'm afraid to say. But yeah, just obviously happy St Patrick's Day to everybody, of course.
Happy St. Paddy's Day, everyone. Hope you're all drinking your green beer and, splitting the G on your Guinness pints.
There you
There we
go.
go.
Look,
Shane, turn the
here's one
logo
I
away.
prepared
So,
earlier.
yeah,
Hang on,
good
hang on.
fun.
There you go.
There we go.
You couldn't read it, you couldn't see it. But no, look, I know obviously, I'm sure a lot of people like myself are probably the same. Unfortunately, what happened overnight probably dampened St Patrick's Day a little bit, but it's still an important day for Irish people and the greater Irish diaspora. So just want to make sure everyone knows and that hope they're all having a wonderful St Patrick's Day and look out and look after each other.
So that's how you say that word. I would have butchered it, Shane.
Slancha.
No, diaspora or
Oh,
whatever it is.
diaspora.
I would have butchered it. Anyway, yeah, it's gonna be an interesting pod. It's gonna be brutal. Um, yeah, I'm just hanging for that 5 minutes mark to pass on this pod so we can full on cut sick about the game. So yeah, we'll what we'll do is we'll just get into it anyway and just go with our starting lineups and all the good stuff off the back of that, and then yeah, just chat about the game in general. So starting lineups leading into the game, Shane, it was there was rumours floating around that Trusty and Kelmac had been ruled out or injured. So there was talk about that for a couple of days beforehand. Turned out to be true. So starting lineup, I forgot Scales. I don't know what was going on with him. I completely forgot is he injured or was he
I didn't
dropped
know
or
either.
things?
I wasn't aware of it. It looks like he's listed with a head injury, but I it completely skipped me as well.
Probably a concussion from wearing the headband, cutting off half the blood to his brain or something like that. Anyway,
I think it looks stylish, Liam. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm only stirring anyway. But yeah, it's like so coming into it, it was like, all right, the talk was who's the fourth string centre back for us? Because usually it's Carter Vickers and Trusty, and then next drops Scales, and you slide Trusty over if Carter Vickers rotates out. So the options there are who are we going to have? Who was going to be there? Was it going to be Dane Murray? That's what everyone was expecting. That's what most of the talk around town was and everything. And then the fact of the matter, it was Naroski coming back in for, considering he'd only played 23 minutes of football for us this season. Big time for him to come into a big game with the amount of rust he'd have on him and to get out there and play the way he did. We'll talk about the individual players. We'll go through that later on, Shane. But yeah, I thought he did himself really well. So it was strange to see him coming in. And then the other one was middle of the park, Calmax out, which meant we only really had three options to start, didn't we? It was always going to
Mm.
be Engels, McCowan, and Hatade. And yeah, we're going to go through the players individually. Yes, so we will. But I didn't have any fear. I saw that lineup and I thought that's still good enough for us to beat them. And yeah, wasn't ideal, especially with them coming off extra time, penalty shootout win in the Europa League like 2 days earlier, 2.5 days earlier. I thought we'd be ready to hit the ground running and just launch at them and just tear the strips off them. But, wasn't to be. What was your thought, Shane, when you saw that lineup?
Well, yeah, I was intrigued with Naroski coming back in because I thought I wasn't aware of the Scales situation. So when I found out Trusty was out, I just assumed Scales would come in. But looking back on it, if I'd known Scales was out at that point, I would have been probably thinking Murray comes in to partner Carter Vickers, and you've got that senior head next to the younger lad, as opposed to Naroski. Because Murray's played recently. He obviously played in the Champions League game against Aston Villa. He's had a little bit of exposure recently compared to Naroski, who has been on the bench a little bit, but hasn't been getting any game time. Sorry. So, but still, regardless, it was intriguing, but it wasn't concerning. And the same with the middle of the park. Obviously, Calmac, you never like to see Calmac out. And I have no doubt we're going to go into detail about what he brings to the squad later on in the pod. but we've liked what we've seen at Engels at the 6. So, I haven't had any concerns with him fronting up at the 6. And if in all honesty, I was actually excited to see that midfield 3 get a run, where you've got McCowan actually playing and starting in his first derby next to Hatate, and then Engels actually dropping back into that more sort of holding midfielder role. So, a couple of intriguing, but nothing to be concerned about decisions.
The other thing, Shane, going into the game, like when I saw their lineup compared to ours, the one thing that jumped out to me off the page was pretty simple. And it was such a basic thing, but I thought, okay, they put all the hammer throwers out there. They just picked a big lineup.
Mm,
And we know we're going to go out there and try to play actual football. They're going to go out there. Barry's going to get them all ready to go out there and kick lumps out of us. And yeah, like, that was the thing I thought coming into the game. Like their midfield was big. They had a couple of guys there didn't mind kicking lumps out of people in Raskin and Barron, like sitting in front of their back three. So yeah, it was a bit of a it was going to be a strange one, and the game turned out to be a game of two halves, all things considered. But yeah, I remember when Brendan comes in, he said we need to get more athletic and we need to get more quality. Well, we've got quality, but we need to get some more size in the team, and that much is obvious after the last couple of derbies as well. But yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one, all things considered, there, Shane. So the thing for me as well, when you go to the bench, like because we had a few out pre-game and looking at it going, oh, silver lining, we've got Eder, we've got Yang, we've got Taylor as our experienced guys on the bench. Then we've got Sinisalo. I don't even know what his face looks like anymore. Honestly, can't remember. If you were to show like five players from our B team and one of them Sinisalo, I wouldn't know which one he is. If it was just their face, right, of outfit, kits and like I got no idea. Can't even remember what he looked like now. But you got Johnny Kenny, Dane Murray, Anthony Ralston, Jude Bonner, and Francis Turley on the bench. So that's like a good one for the youth academy. But at the same time, it's a Glasgow derby. That's the thing about us as Celtic fans. I constantly say on pods, I want to see some of these guys come through, but at the same time, we get to play that mob from across the town, and I'm like, no, I don't want to play the young guys in this game.
mm.
So I don't know. I feel like a bit of a walking contradiction on that front, particularly with this fixture. But then there's a lot of people in the same boat.
No, there's a time and a place to include a lot of the youth team and the younger players, right? You've got to have that balance, and game to game, opponent to opponent will dictate that. And I think we could all see that they were going to come out and be physical, right? I don't think there was ever any way, shape, or form they were going to do anything different other than try and kick lumps out of us and, try and physically bully us. And for the most part, they did. I know we'll get into the game chat a little bit later. And really, there's only a couple of names on that bench that I would look at. Like I look at Tony Ralston and think he could come on and give us a little bit of a physical edge that we might be missing. But there isn't anyone else on that bench really that I'd go that can come on and kind of, I guess, stamp their authority a little bit where needed. So in that regard, yes, it was a little bit lacking.
Yeah, it was the lack of a game changer. Like realistically, if you look at things, Shane, and go, all right, in an ideal world, when we have a fully fit squad, that bench is probably going to have McCowan on it because Kelmack will be back starting. It's going to have Bernardo on it. It's going to have probably Scales on it and Naroski on it because Trusty would be starting next to Carter Vickers. So realistically, looking at that, there's four guys on our bench that could potentially be game changers, make something
Yep.
happen. Those four guys remove the four young kids that I said at the bottom there off the bench. So that just shows, look, I'm not making excuses. Like credit where it's due. Rangers out enthused us. They didn't outplay us. They're a bunch of hammer throwers, and I'll die on that hill. They're not footballers. They're not good footballers. But they out enthused us. They outworked us, and they got away with what the refs would let them, and off they went. So and they took their chances. So at the end of the day, we got beat. And I'll just bring up some comments that tie into that before we get into the actual game. So, yeah, we've got Smell the glove is that was a steaming pile of Tom Kite. Heavy vibes is sick to my guts again. John Cairns is saying, how can we come within a bee's dick of beating Bayern and sharp with that performance against the Zombies? Particularly with that, John, particularly where we've had a whole week off. They played a couple of days before. You'd think we'd be the ones coming out with full of energy and able to run the game out and everything. And I thought they'd run out of legs at around the 60-minute mark and we'd be all over them for the last 30. But for them to come at us that hard that early, wasn't expecting that. I was expecting us to get the early goal within the first 5-10 minutes. And Mahesh is saying he's said on this channel and others this season, Rangers have used Moneyball well in recruiting despite their inconsistency. Celtic's financial advantage is being neutralised by Rangers Moneyball. And Henrik McLarston has a great question here. Would you rather win a treble and no derbies or vice versa? That's something I wanted to laugh at later on, Shane, because imagine if, they even win the next one, but we still get the treble. That just shows that they'll carry on. They're the better team, but at the end of the day, we're better over the course of the season. We're out there beating everyone else when they're dropping points. So it's disappointing. I want both.
Well, yeah, me too. I think we all want both, but I think if you had to pick, there's most certainly an obvious answer there, right? Which is the treble, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough pill to swallow if you were to lose all the derbies during the season, but if you go on and collect a treble, well, them winning the derbies has really meant nothing but status as opposed to actually anything material, right? So, but yeah, I'm with you, and I think as we'll get into it, no doubt people will see the frustration is not born out of the fact that we lost. The frustration is born out of the fact of the performance that we put in.
It was absolutely turgid, and that's the thing. I'm coming in here and I was hoping we'd be coming in off the back of some Hun scalping and being able to get on here and just have a massive gloat session, look like the smuggest faces you've ever seen on the podcast, and just be like, yeah, you're shit, your team shit, blah, 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 and just giving it to them both barrels. But at the end of the day, they aimed up. We didn't, particularly in that first half. So, yeah, I'll bring up a few other things. Maddie's saying bitterly disappointed. And then Maddie's saying, when I heard Trusty wasn't playing as well as Kelmac, I had an ominous feeling. Yeah, I thought they were a puncher's chance. That was the way I looked at it. Henrik McLarston is saying Rocky could have thrown the toys out of the pram, but he did well.
Yep.
Hail, hail, lads, and happy St. Patrick's Day. Paul is saying, how y'all going, guys? So, yeah, there's a bunch more in here we can get into. Smell the Glow saying, fed up with happy clappers on pods yesterday, saying that game didn't matter. Every game against those mutants counts, and our players played like pussies. How I miss Bruni. Oh, that game was hanging out for someone to just clatter someone. And the referee, we were saying in our group chat while the game's going on, they're getting away with so much and repeat fouling and all this. And we're expecting one of our guys to just clatter someone and get the first yellow of the game. And Henrik McLarston, no. No.
In what capacity? I'd have him sit on the touchline. Maybe Cherney wouldn't have sprayed the water bottle then if Lenny was there.
I got another option for him. I've said a few times about Jackie Mack as a director of football. If Lenny wanted to come in as a director of football overseeing that, then okay, I could live with it. Because he did have a good eye for talent, from the lower leagues of England and stuff like that. Now, can you see him and Brendan working together? Like Brendan saying, I want these 10, 12 million pound players, and there's Lenny out there trying to sign people on the Peter Lawwell thing of 3 million.
No.
It wouldn't be well. That's pretty much where he could sit. Yeah. Yeah, so it's McLaughlin saying it's actually shown up the last 3 derbies that they are more up for a battle. And that's the key thing. That they seem more who's gonna come out there and just kick someone? Honestly. Sometimes that's what you need in a derby. you need to have that. And we've spoken a few times about that midfield destroyer. Doesn't necessarily have to be that player, but I thought we'll go through the game first, and then we'll dive into this because otherwise I'm going to go off on tangent, Shane. We're 15 minutes in, and honestly, we're just going all over the place. So we'll go through the game. So you give us a general chat about the first half. I'll jump in off the back of that, and then we'll talk about the goals, and I'll just include the goals and everything.
Well, it's going to be a little bit all over the shop. This sort of it's not very analytical, really. It was just an abysmal first half. We were awful from the very opening seconds of the game. They pushed forward. We were hemmed in. We couldn't clear our lines. Eventually, they scored from it. We looked so flat, and they were physically bullying us. Now, granted, there were absolutely a lot of times that they got away with some few fouls. And before anyone jumps in or clips in for it, I'm not saying that's the reason they won and we lost. But there's no doubt that the ref very much wanted to keep his cards in his pockets and not necessarily blow up very early in the game, which always frustrates me and I'm sure frustrates countless others. But regardless of which, we looked extremely flat. You want
On
to
that,
jump in?
Shane, yeah, just on that. On that, if it's a foul in the 80th minute, it's a foul in the 8th minute. That's the way I view it. And in the first 13 minutes, Connor Barron absolutely clattered us twice. Should have got a
Yep.
card for the first, didn't. Didn't even get speaking to. Should have got a card for the second one, didn't. Didn't even get speaking to. I'm like, well, if that's what it's going to be, fine. But at that point, your players should know that,
Hmm.
right? And go, okay, this game's going to be an arm wrestle. We're going to have to match the physical intensity that they're playing at as well. And we didn't.
No. And we never looked like matching them either. And we really struggled. And they pressed us early, and credit to them, they did press us effectively. We have to give credit where it's due, as much as it pains me to say. But immediately they're on the front foot and we're penned in. They obviously score where Raskin, gets in ahead of Schlupp, who's just seemingly not switched on. Um, I don't know how tall Nico Raskin is. I don't think he'd be much taller than me, and he's nodded in the first goal, which was very disappointing. And then you're sort of expecting a response, but we never really got it. And the one thing that I came back to when I was thinking about this today, and I was very much all over the shop with trying to actually get an understanding of what happened here. And as I said before, this isn't going to be super analytical or, even linear. It's a lot of venting, probably. We had absolutely no control of the game. At no point in that first 45 did we have any control over the game. The game was just being played at this sort of frenetic pace after they scored, and we looked disjointed at the back. We looked like a back four. We only had one player different to our usual or most recent back four, which was Rocky. And he was the only one that really didn't look necessarily out of place from a defensive point of view. And even his passing wasn't too bad in comparison to his other compatriots who looked all at sea. You'd swear this was a back four that was just playing together for the first time. We were very disjointed all over the park. When we did get the ball forward, there was no cohesion. We just were miles off it. That's probably the best way I can describe it. We were miles off it. We looked flat, all that you can throw at us. But we never ever got control of the game. We never put our foot on the ball. We never tried to dictate terms. It was just the game was being played at a pace that we weren't able to dictate, essentially. And, even despite the fact they went one up, they had, before they even scored the second, they should have been 2-0 up when Cherney picked up the ball from the Schmeichel pass, which was very loose. If he actually trusted his right foot, he's probably scoring that and making it 2-0. It was only after they scored the second with Diamande, which again was just, we're talking about lapses here, right? There was horrible lapses and mistakes. The passing was terrible. Marking at times was terrible. Positioning was awful. And that second goal really highlighted it, where Raskin makes the run. Engels doesn't track it. AJ's not tucking in. Carter Vickers comes up to meet Raskin. He's caught in no man's land. He nods it over. Diamande's all in space. It was just a comedy of errors, basically, which led to their second goal. It was only really after that point did we all of a sudden start to look like we were making things happen. And, we did finish with a flurry towards the end of the second half. but it was too little too late. And it couldn't take away the fact that that first half was by far and away the worst half of football we've played since the last derby at Ibrox.
Yeah, so for me, the first half, it was the trying to figure out the best way to word this so I don't sound like I'm repeating what you said, Shane.
Past 5 minutes, though, you can tee off.
Yeah, I know. I'm just looking at it like I don't know what the hell was wrong out there. Like, honestly, the players come out, the attitude sucked, right? The gameplay was there. Did we have a cushy week training? Did the players just think, oh yeah, it's just gonna happen? Like, what the hell's going on between their ears? Because you got 60,000 people there, the first time in years they have an away support. My man of the match goes to the net and the cops who had to deal with getting those wankers into the stadium. And then also the man of the match goes to the people who had to clean up all the smashed up chairs they left behind, right? You got, because our players didn't, no one in from our playing staff or coaching staff deserves the man of the match. So anyone who dealt with that, you get it from me. But putting that aside for a second, the way we played, it was just so passive. How many times did we underhit a pass? Casper is really good with his ball at with the ball at his feet, and he's normally like faking passes and going past people and all this sort of shit. Like you said, the second goal, Engels didn't track the run from Raskin. Yeah, I know, but how often do you think over the course of a season he's been in that situation? He's like, okay, I don't need to track this guy running forward to press because Casper's that good. He's going to put the ball past him, and so I need to get to where the space is so I can release my winger, because that's what he was doing. I went back and watched it again. As much as it sucked, I put myself through this shit and watched it a second time to see that. So Engels is doing that. He didn't track the runner because he's trusting his teammate to do the right thing, who's completely butchered it. So he underhit him. Our constantly in the first half, the ball go to a midfield. And then there's acres of space. I said this at halftime. There's acres of space in front of us in the middle of the park. But we keep putting the ball out wide to the fullback and the winger when they're playing a 3-5-2. So they have a wing back and they've got say if it's on the right, they've got a left-sided centre back and a wing back clogging that up. And we're trying to go through there. Yet you've got heaps of space at the top of the box. Dumb decisions. That's not the coach. That's not what nothing they were doing. They weren't pressing us in that part of the pitch. So to me, it was once we broke the press, we were making dumb decisions. The perceived pressure. That's what it was. There wasn't pressure on us to constantly go to the wing. They weren't forcing us there. There was space. We just didn't do the right thing. It's frustrating.
And you think about, their recent performances. They played midweek, right? They played of 120 and then went to penalties, right? They're looking to stamp their authority in this game early. They're looking to get an early goal, right? That's exactly what we had to be aware of. And we weren't. We let them just boss the game really early on, and they scored. And you're sort of sitting there going like, that's when I looked and thought, now they're a puncher's chance. I fully expected us still to turn it around and win, but it was at that point where they scored, and I know it sounds like a little bit of a Captain Obvious statement, but because they scored so early on, I thought, no, they're up for this, and they're a chance now, and we've let this happen.
And spot on, Shane. Like, if that game was still 0-0 in the 70th minute, they're going to be out on their legs. They're going to be worried. Our crowd's going to be up and about, getting like G'ing us on, cheering us on. But the fact of the matter is they come out, they get that early goal, and they're like, okay, and breathe. Now we can just relax into it. And when you look at the match stats, right, this is going to show, like, I'm not massive on stats, but by the way, the first goal by 5'10" Nicholas Raskin. So he's a bit taller than you, Shane.
Okay, that's a fair bit taller than me. Sorry,
But
sorry,
he's still,
people.
but the funny thing is, he's still like one of their short midfielders, but he's still bigger than pretty much everyone except for he's bigger than McCowan and Rio. So it's anyway back to the stats, right? So the passing stats. This is what I was looking at before. We had 551 passes with 84% pass accuracy. Sounds nice and pretty football, right? But it wasn't. Second half, it looked a lot nicer. But Their passes for the game, 215 passes only. They had 336 less passes than us for the game. At only a 65% pass accuracy. They had 28% possession. The fouls was 13-10, and they had 3 more fouls than us and 3 yellows. We had none, right? So everything balanced up there. They weren't outplaying us. We played we went off a cliff after that first goal, and that steadied the ship for them. And then they were like, okay, we're in this. So yeah, it was just frustrating. Tough night to watch, I'll tell you that much.
Well, I just wanted to comment on you having to rewatch the game, and obviously give a quick shout out to Paul on the weekend review. It did the same today, and I just remember thinking to myself when you guys mentioned it, it's like breaking back into Alcatraz. It's just full on.
Oh,
Yeah.
sometimes.
I did the highlights at lunch so I could just review my notes for the pod. I don't think I've signed into work faster.
The things you do for the pod, right? So, yeah, it's ridiculous. That's the only way I can sum it up. But yeah, rewatched it, had to. But yeah, it's just frustrating. Like, our decisions were dumb. That's the way I look at it. It wasn't anything they were doing. Their press was there, but they weren't even pressing that hard. Like, it was a one-man out press. So all you got to do is one pass beat it. And then there was times like we went a corner, the ball comes. I know this is probably jumping into the second half because I am here, but we win a corner. We try to put a cross in. It doesn't go anywhere. It gets to the top of the box, and then we're like, yeah, back to the keeper.
No,
Shoot the bloody thing.
I'm with you. I'm with you. I don't think they played a good game. I don't think they played well. Sure, they deserve credit in parts, but they weren't a team that played well. We were just awful.
Yeah. So yeah, overall, like their goals, they took their chances. Casper had a couple of good saves. Butland had a fair few good saves as well. I'll give him credit there. Half time, the sub, we're all saying, like, if we're going to make subs at half time, what was it going to be? And the two for me were either Schlupp comes off and you bring Taylor on, and the other one was Kun off, Eder on, put Maida back on the wing, and put Jota across to the right. And you called that one as well in our chat, Shane, and that's what happened. So how'd we go in the second half?
Much better. And the reason we looked much better is there seemed to be a bit of a system. So when we were getting the ball forward, we weren't as aimless as we were before. We weren't always just constantly wide, waiting and sort of going into those spaces that were completely blocked off. There was much more control for one part. We actually controlled the second half for the most part, which we couldn't do at all during the first 45. But there was a bit more composure when we got on the ball. So the likes of McCowan and Hatate and even Engels, when they were getting on the ball, it didn't seem anywhere near as rushed, right? And I know I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, but the Hatate goal that actually equalised, I think, was actually a really good example of that composure when the ball comes back to McCowan, and he just delays the pass instead of trying to rush it. He waits until he needs to hit it. And that level of composure encapsulates what we were seeing in the second half that we weren't seeing in the first half. And all of a sudden, the whole complexion of the game changed just before. I mean, definitely when we scored the first, it was an entirely different game. But just prior to that, you could tell the momentum had shifted, and they were hanging on all of a sudden. They were dropping down. They were time wasting. They wanted to kill as much time as possible, stop any rhythm that we were developing. And for the first time in the game, we had complete control, and they looked like they were just hanging on. And it kind of ties into what you were saying earlier, which is if we'd actually had this at 0-0 when we get to the 60th or 70th minute, again, their legs after playing 120 earlier midweek was always going to tail off. So it was kind of really heading in that direction anyway. And we absolutely deserve to get back on parity. Obviously Maeda with the first goal. We were talking about Nico Raskin actually heading the ball in for them. Well, Maeda getting up and over the top and heading it in probably wasn't on my bingo card either. It's a great ball in. It's a great finish from someone who's just in supreme form, let's be honest. and I don't know what we do without him at the moment, particularly leading the line. But then we had the momentum and we were creating chances. There were a couple here and there. Hatate puts one past the post. There was the one where Eder and McCowan got in each other's way, which should have been a good chance to score from. And then you get the Hatate equaliser, which is a wonderful, probably our best bit of build-up all match. And at this point, we look like we're going to go on with it. And then, all of a sudden, we kind of fell back into that. They came out at us a little bit, and we fell back to where we were in the first half, where we were so poor, where we ceded control, the passing got loose, and we lost that composure. And the absolute sucker punch for them to score off a goal kick, and I've no doubt we'll analyse this in a bit more detail shortly. It was just such it. Honestly, a gut punch is all I can describe it as. That's what it was. It was just deflating to the core.
Yeah, it was. You pretty much covered everything off there, Shane, that I would have touched on as well. Like the way we played, the speed of play, everything was good. There was a plan. We were more direct going into those acres of space, which was great. But the goals, I don't need to talk about the ones we've already had. You've covered them off, the header, and then Hatate. He was pinging them from space all game, and he wasn't far off. He had the radar tuned in pretty well. So, yeah, I thought that was good. But their goal to go ahead, as you said, it was off goal kick. And the frustrating thing for me was leading up to that goal kick, I thought we should have had a free kick. So I'm when I'm sitting here at 1:20 in the morning or whatever it bloody was at that time, and I'm just screaming oh, it's a free kick. Come on, ref, stop. You can't, like that, just screaming at it. Even blind Freddie would have seen it and all this. Poor Freddie, he's blind, but he would have seen it and all that. But it just makes no sense. But then I'm you're a Scottish referee and we know you're association, so whatever. And then the goal kick comes and the ball comes in. CCV looks like, am I going to go to head of this? Am I going to hold back and let it bounce? He looked unsure, he was in two minds what he was going to do. And then AJ slipped over and then he had to make a decision. And then, so he looked like, okay, I'm going to do this, that. And he's like, and ahhing. And then he had to jump up because AJ fell on his ass. And the next thing you know, now our whole back line's exposed because the bounce of the ball went their way and we got caught out. So, and credit where it's due, it's a fair hit. So on the goal, so they took their chance. It was something out of nothing, basically, but it was a hard one to take.
Oh, well, it was just, we talked about their second goal with Diamande scoring, how that was a comedy of errors. This goal put that in the shade. Carter Vickers completely misjudges the header. AJ falls over, I'm guessing, because he sees the ball skid past or go past Carter Vickers, but he just falls over. He recovers well enough to actually put a challenge in against Igamane, but it's like he's trying to nick the ball off him and start a counter-attack instead of actually just trying to actually knock it away, right? It was a tame effort to he overcommits, and it's a really tame effort to try and win the ball. And credit where it's due. It's a cracking finish, and you've got to say that. It is a wonderful strike, but the lead up to it was just one of such frustration.
You want to know something, Shane? When AJ come flying in like that last one after he fell over, I'm looking at it going, I don't care about next week. Clatter him, break his leg. Don't let him get the shot away. I would have copped a red card and happily have worn it in that situation. You're 2-2 at home in a derby. You fought back. If someone's got to just take a card, a yellow or even a red in that situation, I can live with it because AJ is looking leg weary. You've got Ralston on the bench who can play the next couple of weeks. I'm not going to be too worried if, we copped a red card in that situation. We would have been able to see out the time. We would have just sacrificed someone up front, subbed someone off, put another defender on. Realistically, you look at our squad there, who could have gone on? You've got Ralston on the bench who could jump on, so you could bring someone else off and you just park it and just take the point.
And that was the thing.
That's what you do.
And that moment kind of encapsulated the whole match in some regards, particularly the first 45 or so, because you've got the mistakes that lead up to the goal, and then you've got the lack of a sense. Well, obviously, you're talking about dumb mistakes before. Well, I think the way AJ approaches that, he overcommits way too much. He tries to win the ball in a fashion I don't think is conducive to actually what's needed in that situation, and so that's a really dumb way to try and win the ball back. And then just the lack of that ties into the lack of physicalness as well, right? You're saying, well, clatter him, take the booking, just make sure you don't let him get a strike off, right? Well, he doesn't.
That's the basketballer in me, though, Shane. It's the old take foul. Someone's on a fast break, you just smack them, and then they go. And if they've got to give up a free throw or whatever, that's just me growing up playing the sport that's actually a tactic in. So then you have your football. It's like you look at our next two fixtures. Even if he was to do it and it was seen as okay, you're going to get a 2-game ban because you red carded this one, you get 2 games. Next two is Hearts at home, St Johnson away. We're not going to miss him in those 2 games. So
Yeah, exactly.
take the red card if you need to. Like I know this is some people probably thinking, oh, this is disgusting to say that, but come on, it's gamesmanship. You got to do it if you got to do it, especially in a
Yeah,
derby like that.
we're just saying put a tackle in, right? We're not saying anything malicious. It doesn't have to be malicious or anything of that degree, but we're wanting someone, he's about to get a strike off that could win them the game. You need to stop that. You've worked hard to get back into the contest, which was well out of your grasp. You've got to stop that from happening.
Worst case scenario, you smash into him, you absolutely hammer him as he's shooting it. You're going to bump him off balance. It's not going to go into the top corner like it did. It's going to go out for a goal kick. It might be given as a free kick. Great, whatever. At least it's not going to be that shot where he's in rhythm. So,
Yep.
yeah, it's just a bit of an interesting one overall there. But, yeah, I just thought all up, that pretty much summed up the game for me. If there was a perfect way to put a bow on the wrapping of that game, it was they made something out of nothing, took the chance, and we had the calamity of errors again. It summed up the first half in particular. But, yeah, I think I'd say we deserve better. We deserve better because of the way we played in the second half. But at the end of the day, you can't play 45 minutes of football and expect to win a derby, a game, let alone a Glasgow derby. So, yeah, they were the better team overall because they actually had a game plan and stuck to it.
Yep.
So we'll normally go through our player focus, but before we do that, Shane, I'm just going to go through some comments. We've got a heap piling up here that I'm going to have to skim over some. So apologies if we don't get to your comments here, everyone. You're all going wild in the comments section, and I'm loving it. So Paddy McGinty's coat is saying, if Calmac's been carrying an injury for the past couple of games, why the fuck did Brendan play him in those games? Poor management for me. McLaughlin is saying, recent success has hidden the fact that we are powder puff all over the park and have been for many years. Basically, we've been crying out for the last how many years saying we need a Wanyama type in the middle for I don't know how long. Henrik McLarson is saying so many of our midfielders pulling out of 50-50s. I'm guessing you're saying midfielders by MF there, Henrik. Like, I first read that and straight away thought something else completely.
That's such a good call.
Dominic saying we still need a big physical midfielder. The thing is, though, the way we play, they need to actually have a bit of skill about them as well. Heavy Vibes are saying some fans not too stressed that Huns have beat us twice in a row, scoring 3 goals in both games. The fact that they've scored 9 goals against us in 3 games this season is, yeah, not good enough.
And I think that's a really good point is, some people might look at this frustration and go, look, it's just a result. You've effectively got the league wrapped up. Why do you need to sort of go down this path? Well, it's obviously a very important fixture. It's also judging it on the performance we've seen, but we're also looking back at the performance over the past couple of derbies. So this is a pattern now. And that's what's concerning the most and leading to even more frustration is that if this was a once off and everything up until this point had been okay, all right, maybe we cop this on the chin a little bit better. But this is a pattern now.
Yeah, and that ties into something I was going to go to after we finish this, but has Rogers learned anything from the last couple of derby doings? Like, if you go through here, like, Paddy McGinty's coach saying, if Ange was a one-trick pony, is Brendan any different? Like, honestly, this Rangers team are giving him all sorts of troubles, and it's not ideal.
That's a really tough question because a lot of what I thought went wrong in the first half, I couldn't necessarily 100% put down to Brendan. You could argue that he could take a more proactive response to try and change things, but the mistakes that they were making in the first half were mistakes that I think were more at player level and just a complete lack of focus. Now, do you blame Brendan for that? I think in some quarters maybe you can. But overall, this was one where I looked at and thought, no, this is just, we are miles off it. To use a basketball parlance, if I can, we laid an egg in that first half. We really did. And I don't necessarily think that was all down to Brendan. Now, whether or not he could have foreseen that, but certainly the physical side of things, maybe you put Ralston in at right back instead. But AJ's normally not someone that you'd take out of a physical match, is he? So again, like I didn't expect AJ to have such a poor game, right? I don't think Brendan's expecting it either. So I'll give Brendan a little bit of an out for this one.
The thing is, like, I'm looking at it in two ways here. With that comment about if Ange it's copping shit, basically it's Spurs for not having a plan B, right? And similar things were set up in Glasgow. But the thing is, Brendan's first in at the club, he was really good tactically. If things aren't going well, let's make a couple of subs, change a formation and go. Where's that Brendan? Did Leicester take that out of him? Because that's what I'm missing here, and that's what I want to see from him. Like, we've got a class manager. I'm not saying piss off, sack him, he's no good. What I'm saying is we've seen that he can make those changes on the fly in derbies before, and we haven't seen that from him the last couple. Now, that's the big issue for me. Yeah, he had Baltimore. He had him coming in and outdoing him tactically, and we win on a penalty shootout in the Scottish Cup, right, the League Cup, and then they beat us at their joint, and then they beat us at our place. So realistically, there's 3 real close ones in a row, 2 losses and a penalty shootout win. Where's these changes? Like, it's time to earn your money, Brendan. You're going to get that full week on the training pitch, and you're going to play the same old football like that we do, and then our players get out there and then they get into our heads and they win. They're up for the physical battle, and our guys are a bit shell shocked and don't play well. At the end of the day, okay, so let's change the formation. We're a bit light on in the middle, so, and we're getting beat up in there. So, do you want to go to like a, not the 4-2-3-1? Could look at something like that and just change it slightly, have more of a centralised point in the middle, and have Hatade playing the 10 right behind Maeda or something like that, and just change up the point of attack and the point of emphasis there. Do you want to change it so you go 2 up top together and play Eder and Maeda together and sacrifice a winger and load up the midfield like they are 4-4-2, but just change it so maybe a 4-2-2-2 or however you want to do it, and just muck around with it that way? Where are these changes? Like, we need to have that plan B that's going to work with the players we've got. So if you get in this situation, all right, option 1's not working, let's try this. That doesn't work, let's try this. Because that game was there to be taken.
Yep.
So, yeah, Henrik's saying here, players look like they've got into our players' heads. McLaughlin's saying the last 6 derbies, they've scored 3 goals on 4 occasions versus us. BR needs to rethink his strategy. Smell the Glover saying we Barry brought Walter Smith's tactics, physicality, pouncing on mistakes, riding their luck at the back, but winning the game. Yep. So, and then Henrik McLaughlin is saying, will Rogers' ego allow him to change his strategy? It has to. So, yeah, I'm just looking at it going, we just don't need to be playing that 4-3-3 every time. Like, if it's not going to work on that, then we need to figure it out. But yeah, it's skip down here a bit, get to some of the newer comments. But yeah, well, I think the way we need to look at it, Shane, is we'll go through the player focus. We'll get into that part of it, and then we'll wrap the game talk up, and we'll just finish off with a couple of things, and off we go. So, what do you want to do? Go through each individual player, or do you just want to just have a free for all?
Um. Oh, look, I'm pretty easy. I think there's a clear gulf between the good players and the poor players. I'm happy to do a little bit of a free for all on time together if you want.
Sweet. So how I'll start it then is I'm just going to go straight on here about what I said in our group chat. To me, the only players. So if you're ranking every player out of 10, okay, you've got to understand this. We had people in our groups today saying this player gets a 7, this player gets a 5. A 5 is your bang average middle performance. I think sometimes, this isn't at you, Shane. This is just in general. This is me setting a scale for us to actually work to here. If I got out there and played, okay, and I didn't do anything great, but I didn't do anything poor, a 5 would be what you'd expect me to get, okay? So a 9 or a 10 is exceptional. A 1 or a 2 is kick him out of the squad for next time, right? So realistically, the only ones, in my opinion, that get anything above a 5 would be Engels, would be Naroski, and Maida. Second half, Hatate would, but first half, not so much. They were our best 4 players. In my opinion.
I slightly disagree, and I've been umming and ahhing about this all day because when I was going through the list, I was tending to find players with a number of players with 5 or above, and I sort of mentioned in the group chat. I think it's possible to have a number of players in this fixture that you actually do see as having a 5 or above, because those that weren't at that level were extremely poor. And I'm going to start there, actually. So pretty much our back 5, apart from Naroski, who I thought was actually very solid. And if it wasn't for him, we could have easily been 2 or even 3 down early doors. His positioning and his ability to cover was actually very good. And I thought he was the best of our back 4 or back 5, actually. Casper, he was subpar for me. He was a 4. AJ, that's by far and away the worst game I've seen AJ play ever in a Celtic shirt. He was a 2. He was abysmal. He made mistake after mistake. His passing was awful. He wasn't contributing. And his performance was summed up in the very last minute of the game where he skied an opportunity to actually equalise. All things considered, maybe it comes to him quickly, but he's made a great position in the box. It's a great ball. He should actually be getting, or at least forcing Butler into a save, and he skies it. And that typified his game. Carter Vickers was not very good. He looked lost. He was below 5. He was a 4. I'd give Naroski probably a 5, to be honest. Schlupp, again, below 5. So your back 5 there, apart from one, are all underneath that 5 mark. And 2 of them in particular are below 4, right? Or even 3.
I'll jump in there to do my back line, and then we'll get in the midfield and work our way through like that. So the way I look at it is, our whole back line, other than Naroski, like if we go through here, Robert Gibson saying if you get a 5 out of 10, you're 50% shot off the bat. That's the way he's looking at it. And then Henrik McGlasson saying a 6 should be the absolute minimum. Yeah, we should, right? That should be what we're expecting. But I was just setting a bar here so we know where we want to be as a minimum, right? I want our players to be in not just a derby, but in every game, a 7 minimum. That's what I want, because we have that much of the ball. We got better players. I expect that. But in this situation here, I'm just setting the ground there. So realistically, Casper, I'll give him a 3.
That's 1 for each save.
Yeah. The thing for me is what got him so bad is his distribution was terrible. He made some good saves. Distribution terrible, and he was under-hitting passes or he was passing to guys way out in the corner, which then allowed them to put one or two guys on and trap and pin the ball in. So he wasn't passing to guys in the right parts of the pitch, and he was putting them into trouble. It's like the old hospital pass. He was setting up the fullbacks. Schlupp in particular copped it from those passes with him. Like
Mm.
Schlupp was terrible. For me, I'll give him a 3 as well. Like absolutely disgusting. Like AJ 3. Those were our 3 worst in the back line. I'm not a fan in that the way they played in that game. Carter Vickers. This is going to sound really weird. Love him as a player, but every time I've seen him with the captain's armband, I think he has a lesser game than he's capable of. Sometimes that little bit of extra material on your sleeve can weigh down your game. And yeah, Carter Vickers is a great player for us, but he shouldn't have would you give him a 4?
I gave him 4.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd give him a 4 because he did have a few clearances, headers in the box, that sort of stuff. But it was a shocking game for him. Naroski, I'll give him a 6. Honestly, I'll give him a 6. The whole back line was average,
I
well below average.
I probably gave Rocky a 5. I just thought, and that's he's on par. He's one of the 5 that make that mark. But I thought, mate, and it's probably through no fault of his own, really, in all honesty. But I just felt that there was a bit of disjointedness, particularly when we were trying to play out. He wasn't familiar, with how we play. He wasn't really familiar. I think his positioning wasn't sort of at the level where you'd have like a Scales or Trusty in terms of their availability. So that's why I give him a 5.
You want to know something? How I'd counter back on that, Shane? Every time Naroski's played for us, who's he been replacing in the lineup?
Usually Scales, hasn't it been?
Carter
Was it Carter
Vickers.
Vickers? Okay.
Because when you had him
He
and
hasn't played for
Lagerbielke,
so long, I've forgotten.
yeah, he's always played right centre back for us. I can't picture him ever playing left centre back. Every other time when he was in there, remember the time when it was him in there with Lagerbielke? Lagerbielke played left centre back.
Yeah, that was in the first. That was like going back to like the first
Yeah,
derby of last season.
and then there was Scales in with him. Where'd Scales play? Left centre back. So he's only played right centre back. So the fact that he's out of position, but he's the only one of the back 4 players in the back line who was actually willing to get the ball and run with it a couple of steps forward to push past someone who's trying to press him to then make the next pass in the midfield. For me, that's what pushes him up higher.
Fair counter. Fair counter.
It's little things like that that I
Yeah, no,
noticed the second
fair
time
point.
watching.
Fair point.
And so then we go to our midfield, Shane. So what was your thoughts on that?
Um, First half, most of them were pretty relatively anonymous. I thought Hatate was probably the best of the 3 in the first half, but our midfield really didn't have any sort of control in the game or any foothold in the game in the first half. I think they actually all, to be honest with you, they all got pass marks for me. So I actually pushed Hatate up to it's going to be very generous, a 7. I actually thought he was okay in the first half. Second half, I thought he controlled the game really well, and he was a huge focal point for us. He obviously scores the goal, has a couple of chances, but he's involved in everything. So I thought he was probably the best of the midfield 3. Engels and McCowan both got a 5. I didn't think Engels was anywhere near as bad as some people were making out in a few quarters. I don't think he exerted any influence on the game to a degree that I was hoping he would, but he wasn't awful. And most certainly you couldn't lump him in with the likes of Casper or AJ or even Carter Vickers. Not at all. He was well and truly a step ahead of that. And McCowan, similar first half, relatively anonymous, was giving the ball away when he was getting on it. Second half, when the game sort of opened up and we got on our terms, you sort of saw what he was about. And I give credit to the lad, in his first derby, he never stopped trying and never stopped showing for the ball, and he was always trying to get involved. And look, he didn't have the best of games, but I still think he did enough to earn a 5 for me.
So middle of the park, our best one over the course of the game, in my opinion, was Engels. And I'm going to probably cop it in the comments because there's a few people here saying, you got Andrew Galea saying Hatate and McCowan worked at least. Engels totally hid in the first half. I don't know what game you're watching, Andrew, because the thing with Engels, is when the ball goes out wide constantly, and it's constantly being played out to the right wing back or the right full back and the right winger. And what's happening? Where does Engels end up having to play? As soon as we lose the ball, he's not in the middle of the park where Kelmack would normally be because he's having to drop back to cover the right back. Then we get the ball back. He's not in the middle of the park. He's basically in a right midfield position because he's trying to get back to the middle of the park. Then later on, he's doing the same on the left because Schlopp's a mile out of position. So he's constantly getting dragged here and everywhere, trying to plug holes in the back line rather than playing the same role that Kelmack would play, where Kelmack drops deep and the centre back split. Engels was getting dragged to cover the fullbacks, getting caught out of position so much that because he's being dragged here and everywhere, he's not able to do his job properly in the middle of the park. So I think it's his first half in particular with Engels was he was trying to cover for his teammates more than doing his own job. And that's a symptom of how poorly we played in the first half. In the second half, when he was actually able to play in the middle of the park and we had some shape and we actually knew what we were doing, then he got his foot on the ball and he started to actually play a bit of proper football. But the work rate, and people saying it's not just in these comments, but social media today has just been driving me insane on this because I thought, and a lot of people saying, oh, for 11.5 million, he should be dominating this fixture. Well, if you're surrounded by a bunch of rocks, you can't be a diamond, can you? Unless you're in the right spot. So, yeah, he was all over the field, and there we go. Heavy Vibes are saying, thought Engels was okay, and he covered every blade of grass. 100% he did. He's taken the corners. It's that, and there you go, Maestro 95. Thank you. It's exactly, saw it the same way I did. I'm not blaming Engels. It was all stemming from the defence. So him copping an absolute hammering in online, I'm getting fed up with it because he was trying to basically play 3 or 4 players' role. So Engels gets a 6.5 for me, right? Hatade gets a 6. McCowan gets a 6. That's it for the midfield. And Henrik McLaughlin, 100%. I would love to be a fly on the wall at Lennoxtown team meeting this morning as well. And Shane, what do you reckon about the forward line, the wingers and the strikers?
Jota, for me, gets a 6. He had some good moments. I thought it took him a little bit of time to get going in the first half. He may have been a victim of the terrible way in which we were playing, but I also thought when he had his opportunity, he was pretty heavily marked and couldn't get any separation from his marker. But after they scored that second goal, he found a little bit of rhythm. He got a couple of shots off. It would have been an absolute worldie if he scored it, but then he starts getting to the ball and he starts getting on the ball. When he shifted to the right in the second half, he was very much involved and a really big creative outlet for us. There was a little bit of conjecture about Yang coming on for Jota, some people expressing disappointment. I actually thought it was the right move because 10 minutes before he got subbed, he was flagging big time. He'd lost that energy that he'd had and he looked like he needed to get to have a break. So I think overall there were some good moments. He definitely gets a pass mark. It's a 6 for me. Maeda, probably our best player on the park all day. Let's be honest. I thought he was. I thought his work rate was excellent in the first half. He was feeding off scraps and he was doing everything you wanted him to do, everything you expect him to do, really. And the second half, when he shifted to the left, he didn't lose any of that cutting edge. And what I loved about it is that he still wants to insert himself on the game. He's still trying to cut inside. He's still trying to pick up good spots in the box as well. He's not just sort of staying wide as a winger anymore, right? He's got that energy and that emphasis at the moment to really be a game changer. And you could see that in the second half, even when he shifted to the left. I gave him an 8. I thought he was easily our best player on the park, and I think he deserves that. Kun, on the other hand, he was awful. He was completely anonymous. His whole match was summed up by that awful free kick. He got a 3 for me. He was terrible. And unfortunately, he's been a little bit off the boil the past few weeks. And I don't know what's going on, but he was rightfully hooked at halftime. He was terrible.
Yeah, so I'll go straight on the Kun since you're there as well. Like, empty shirt. It's the easiest way to sum it up. I don't know what's going on with him. Is he carrying an injury and he's just trying to play through it? Has he got problems with his teeth again? He's not eating and he's losing weight. Is it now that he's not the main man on the wing because you've got Jota there as well, so that the ball doesn't always come to him for the trickery and that it's getting spread around. He's not getting as much of it that he's like losing his shit. Who knows? I just look at it and go, Kun is so much better than what he's dishing out lately. I'm I'm disappointed. That's the easiest way to sum it. To quote a certain, say the line, disappointed. It's like Kun not good enough. Like he gets a 2. He gets the lowest score for me for the whole game. 2, not good enough. I would rather in our next game out against Hearts, Yang starts because at least he's putting in work rate. Or Jota's on the right, Mater's on the left, Eder through the middle. That's the other option. I don't want to see Kun start for a couple of weeks until he can, when he does come on, find some form. Then there you go. Sit your ass on the bench, get some splinters.
I know we're running a little bit long, and I've got a little bit of a tangent, and I think you probably had this on your rundown anyway, so I'm probably skipping ahead. But I was going to jump in at the midfield and thought I'd let this sort of go through the rest of the players. The one thing I did want to actually talk about was the absolute dearth of leadership that was on the park yesterday.
Pump the brakes on that for 1 second because that is the very next thing. I just want to finish giving the rankings to the forwards for myself because I never finished.
Okay, cool.
Mater, 8. Eder, 6. When Yang come on, he gets a 5. I think I've pretty much covered them all now.
What did you give Jota?
Jota, I'm going to, pretty simple. Jota can have, what did I give Kun? I gave Kun Jota can get a 6 because his hair's 3 times as good as Kun's. That's why he's not playing well. There it is. And John here, what's the best platform to watch us on? We've got our YouTube channel. You can get us on Twitter as well. But or on our Facebook page. So with the leadership thing, Shane, do you want me to rattle off what I said in the group chat first, and then you can jump off the back of that and set you up nicely?
Absolutely. Play me in.
All right. So what I said in our chat, right, was the thing I found the most confronting about this game was the players that we would normally say, if Calmac's not there, this guy's a future Celtic captain. In CCV and Alistair Johnson, we say those guys are the next 2 off the rank to be captains. On top of that, you've got Schlupp, who's 32 in experience, and you've got Kasper Schmeichel, who's captained his nation and all this sort of stuff. So plenty of experience. Who were the guys who turned up the most steaming pile of shit performance in the whole game for us? The most experienced guys after Kelmac. And that's confronting to me. So, Shane, there's the alley-oop. Dunk it, mate.
I'm not tall enough to dunk it, but that's okay. That's a different topic altogether. I don't think I've ever seen a game where we have missed Callum McGregor more than we did yesterday. And I don't just mean what he brings on the park from his passing and his positioning, but that game was screaming out for a leader for us on the park yesterday. Absolutely screaming out for someone to take control, to tell everybody like it was, to tell everybody what they needed to do. And that's exactly what Calmac does. He gets in people's ears, he gets in people's faces, he leads by example. We didn't have any of that on the park yesterday. And what was the most frustrating thing, which you've summed up perfectly, is that the 3 players that I would expect to step up in that role in his absence, Casper, AJ, Carter Vickers, were all severely lacking. And that leadership made it ridiculously difficult for us to generate anything in the first half. I would go as far to say that first half complexion, regardless of whether they score first or not, completely changes if we've got Calmac on the park, basically getting stuck into his teammates saying, that's not good enough, let's go, I'm going to set the tone. We didn't have any of that yesterday, and that was a big reason why that first half was completely abysmal. And when we look and go, maybe we can get by without Calmac, or maybe sometimes we can give him a bit of an extra break, there's things like this that come along where I go, well, someone else has to step up and fill that void. and there was a great opportunity to do that yesterday, and they were completely left wanting.
I'm going to go on a little tangent myself now here, Shane. But so you look at it and you take Calmac out, right? Someone who's been at the club since he was a wee boy, he gets it. No Jamesy Forrest, he's just back on grass training from injury. He's someone that even if he's not playing or only coming off of 15 minutes, he knows what the fixture's all about. He knows what the acceptable standards are. Wouldn't have let that happen. If you brought the Bricky on, you bring Ralston on, he gets it. He knows what it's about. He's not the same level of footballer as Johnson. He couldn't have been as bad as him yesterday. So you take Calmac out of it. What are we missing here? I have a really simple thing, right? It's going to sound ridiculous, but thank fuck we've signed KT to come back to the club, because that's another one who will claw and scratch and bleed and give every fibre of his being for that jersey, especially in that derby. That's another one that we need. We need that sort of person. We need a leader. We need to find someone like that as well who will get in the middle of the park, roll the sleeves up, and smash a few fuckers if he has to. Like, honestly, sometimes you just need those aggro players. And yes, I'm agitated from the loss. That's why I'm talking like this. Like, it just grinds my gears is the best way to sum it up. Like, we've got to be better. The players out there who I thought would be those guys weren't. Someone earlier on said we've got a lot of powder puffs in the team. We would have been better off playing some of the powder puff girls. Honestly. Terrible. Do better, Celtic. There you go. That's a little bit of a rant. Where's Liam when we need him? Yeah, so any other points from the game you want to touch on, Shane, or do you want to give your man of the match?
Look, if we're giving man of the match, it can't, like, I probably echo your sentiments about the people who put up the net and the people who fixed up the seats, because I don't think anyone in a Celtic jersey deserves being player of the match, really. Like, you could argue our best player, in my opinion, was easily Dyson, right? But I don't think he did enough to be man of the match. I think, and I say this in all seriousness, I think they had a couple of better players than us. Butland, for one, pulled off a couple of really good saves. He had a fantastic game. He could have easily been man of the match.
And I'll jump on that. If you're going to go with their players, the wee Hobbit Raskin was actually one of their better ones too. I can't stand him. I think he's a shit footballer, but I'll give credit where it's due. So, Brendan McCarthy, I agree with you here. The first two fixtures after the split will be Hibs away and Rangers away. He's like, I'll bet one of my children on it. I don't know how many kids you got there, Brendan, but, start figuring out which is your favourite and you want to hang on to for that one. We had to go there. So, yeah, Shane, we'll finish off with a couple of questions before our final thoughts. So, how do you see Celtic reacting to this loss coming out of the Glasgow derby? And what do you think is next for this Celtic squad over the next couple of weeks?
I expect them to react pretty solidly with a lot of fire, to be honest. I know that sounds a bit stupid to say out loud, but I think we've got Hearts next. And I tell you what, I would not want to be Hearts coming to Celtic Park to face us after that. The reaction to this, the players will know they're not just being called out for a poor performance. We've literally just spent 5 minutes calling out the entire leadership group minus Callum. And we're not alone. And they're going to be copying that. And it wouldn't be surprising to me if Brendan was giving that to them at Lennoxtown between the eyes this morning. If that doesn't fire you up, I don't know what will. And I genuinely think we will see a reaction. And it wouldn't surprise me if we put 5 or 6 past Hearts. In terms of going forward, I think this is... Look, we're going to win the league, right? It's going to happen. And this result isn't going to change that. But it's definitely opened up a lot of questions about where we want this team to be next and what we want this team to be. And I think some areas that both at a manager level and a squad level need severe improvement. And so, as frustrating as overnight was, there is the potential that this could lead to action because of just how I think most people have taken this result. We saw a comment earlier about happy clappers saying that most people are just sort of, some people, I should say, sorry, are sort of knocking this on the head, saying don't worry about it, the league's done, let's not panic. I must admit, I mustn't move in those circles, because everywhere I've been, it's been pretty much condemnation of what was an abysmal performance, and rightfully so. And I think there's some flaws that we need to improve. There's some leadership um, areas that need to be shown again. We need some players to step up, to show that they can step up into those roles. We need that physical midfielder, right? We need that big body in there. A couple of big bodies, even if it's not necessarily midfield, right? But that's the most obvious area. So I think there's some areas that we're going to see some improvement in, just on the basis of what we saw yesterday. So a slight silver lining to what was a pretty awful game.
So for me, I agree with you in terms of we're going to see some sort of Brendan's going to be giving it to him straight up like we did. It's not good enough, and I hope he questions not the necessarily professionalism, but the professional pride of the players. Like, you come in here and you want to, you know, you know what's required, you know the standard, and if you're not going to dish it up and play at that level and put in the work, then Brendan needs to turn around and say, if you're not willing to come along for the ride with us, there's a seat over there for you on the bench. I'd rather see a young, hungry kid come through, like a Jude Bonner or Francis Turley, those sort of guys, or Dane Murray getting a few games here and there, Naroski playing more for the rest of the season. If they're hungry and they're willing to work their asses off and come along for the ride and be there for the right reasons, then do it. Get your professional pride right. Make sure you get your standards right. No shortcuts. And then once that happens, we get on the pitch and we absolutely pump some teams. Hearts are there to be got at. I wouldn't agree with you, Shane. It wouldn't surprise me if we thump them 5-0 or something like that, like on the weekend. Now, I was just looking at the table and the fixture. We got 3 games till the split. If we win all 3 of them and they win all 3 of theirs, Celtic versus Rangers will not happen first game after the split. You can
That's a
guarantee
very
it
good
won't.
pickup.
Because if we're on 13 points and we have a goal difference of plus 69 and theirs is plus 34, so the extra 25 goals difference between the two of us or whatever it is basically means we're 14 points up. You need 15 to win the game, to win the league at the split, or 16 points to be ahead, right? If they drop a game and we can pick up one of those extra wins, we win it before the split. That would be absolutely magic, right? I'd almost be tempted to say, all right, when we go play them at their place, just put the B team out there for fun. If we've already got it won, just for a laugh. But I don't never want to lose to that mob anyway. But we're going to come out and we just got to get the job done. We're realistically, was it 5 wins away from a treble, if you look at it that way, Shane? It's doable. So plenty of time there for us to fix things up, get back on it. And I just hope this is just at the end of the season, we look back and go, this is just a blip, and this was the launching point for us to say, pick our standards up and off we go. So it's going to be fun. It's all there to play for.
Agreed.
So, Shane, you want to go to a final thought to end the pod?
Yeah, something completely unrelated to Celtic or even football. It's going to be basketball. I'll leave it to the final thought, then that way people don't have a go at me for talking about basketball in the pod. I want to give a shout out to Matisse Thybulle, Boomer, who didn't make the last World Cup squad. He's been out injured pretty much this entire NBA season for the Portland Trailblazers. His first game for the entire season came earlier today. So we're literally down to like the last 10 games of like an 82-game season. He played his first game today, and he actually got in which was great to see, let alone, but he actually got in a match-saving block as well. Toronto were about to shoot the 3-ball, which would have taken the game to overtime, and he actually gets a block in. And in his nonchalant way, just has this massive smile on his face. He's a genuinely good bloke, and it's great to see him back on the court again. So I know it's an empty glass, but Matisse, cheers to you.
My final thought is pretty simple. I spent the weekend up in Bendigo in country Victoria at a music and basketball festival. Gotta love it. Go on country for a weekend. It's just class. Loved my time up there. What I needed just to refresh and everything. So Bendigo, don't ever change. Legends to everyone I met up there. Thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you later in the week for the Thursday sesh. So hail, hail.
How?